Absolutely. My name is Johanna Schwaiger. I am from Austria originally. I live in Colorado. I immigrated to the United States about 6 years ago. And I'm an artist, and I practice Falun Dafa since 2001.
So why did you start to practice Falun Dafa?
That is a little bit of a longer story. My mother started practicing before me. So she started in 1999. And my mother was a nurse, and she just retired. No, she was still working. And I just saw the changes in her first when she started reading that book. And that is a funny story too, because she was going to a Shaolin monk presentation with a friend, and they purchased John Falun there. And then she kept telling me about this book that she keeps reading, and she brings it to work. And I noticed that how it changed her. Like, she dealt with depression when I was growing up, and only after 1 year I could tell that she's much happier. And that made me curious. But I was only a teenager, so I was not necessarily interested in something my mother was doing. But because she seemed so much happy and content with herself, and more like, how she used to be more happy, I started being interested. And then one day she said, let's try these meditation exercises together. And I remember that very vividly, because she put a video cassette up, and I saw the meditation exercises for the first time. And I tried to imitate that, and I had tears in my eyes, because somehow there was energy moving in my body that made me feel very grateful, and I couldn't explain at the time why. But now I know, because it's been such a wonderful path over the years, and it has guided me to grow up into the woman that I am today. So at that time I didn't know. I was only 19, but I knew I do want to learn these meditation exercises. I want to do them regularly, and then started reading the book regularly too.
So what changes does Falun Dafa bring to you?
So I was a teenager, and I was in art school, and I had difficulties focusing, and I was a little bit of a rebellious teenager at the time. And when I started practicing, I think the peace I felt from the meditation exercises really calmed me energetically. And I started to be able to focus. And I didn't have very good grades before, but I remember graduating with excellence after just practicing a couple of months. And that was only because finally I could focus, and I could just kind of like rest in myself, if that makes sense. And also learn to respect my parents, learn to respect my teachers, and just wanting to become a mature adult and not just drift along like all the other teenagers would at that age. And just knowing that, and having the principles of truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, and having that as my guide helped me to set my goals in a way where I can become an artist. Because after I finished high school, I was already enrolled in a sculpture class. I wanted to enroll in another arts university.
Do you think Falun Dafa changed or benefits your art career?
It has tremendously benefited my art career. Because of it, I understood that expressing beauty is the most important thing in art. I would have not understood that without that practice, because everybody was just pushing for modern arts and self-expression, as they call it. And because I have these tenets of truth, compassion, forbearance, I know that the art needs to radiate that as well, and it can only be beautiful. And also, you start to want to create the art for the viewer, not for yourself. You want to express that kind of compassion in your artwork. And because I understood that early on, I was able to find the right education and look for the right art, look for old masters, Renaissance masters, Baroque artists, and also for artists that, because I grew up in Central Europe, in Austria, so it was fairly easy for me to connect with that kind of arts. There's a lot of museums. It's easy to travel to Italy. And because of the practice, I learned to look for that kind of beauty and let that inspire my art. So it has tremendously benefited my art, because I stood true. I kept being true to that ideal of always wanting to express beauty and always trying to become better in my craft, and being humble enough to always improve my art in a way where it can really move people's hearts, and it has the effect of uplifting people.
Since you are the coordinator of the 5 days Falun Dafa VIP job, can you tell us more about this?
Yes, of course. So maybe I share a little bit about why it is so close to my heart to even do this kind of work, because I benefit so much from this practice. And then when I was only 19 or 20 years old, I learned about the persecution of Falun Gong in China. And then knowing that people in a different country get tortured for the same practice that I do, I wanted to do anything I can to negate the persecution and speak up in my ways. And I did that through my art, and I did that by speaking about it and distributing flyers and talking to anybody I know about this persecution. And then later, when I moved to the United States and I moved to Colorado, I was honestly fortunate to be able to help in a way where a small group of us, two of my friends that also practice Falun Dafa in Durango, Colorado, we thought it was important to first speak to the government of Colorado, because we live in that state and there was not that many English-speaking practitioners in the state, or maybe Westerner practitioners in that state. And so we decided to first reach out to Congress of Colorado, and first spoke to House representatives, and then later with senator staffers about human rights violations in China. And then later there was bills introduced, and then we were able to speak to the, for instance, now the Falun Gong Protection Act that just passed House of Representatives in May. So every year around July 20th, because that's the anniversary of the persecution of Falun Gong since 1999. Every year we come here and we make appointments with staffers of Senate and House representatives. And because there was also help needed with other states, we started to take on more and more. We started to take on South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, and New Mexico.
When you have meeting with the House of Representatives and the senators, what's their react and feedback to the Falun Gong Protection Act?
So it depends. Today we had 3 meetings. Yesterday we had a few meetings as well. So sometimes they never heard of Falun Gong, or it seems like they never have. And so we start by just explaining what Falun Gong is. And we take our time explaining that, because I feel that once you hear the 3 principles and understand what this practice is, and that people are persecuted for no reason, this is an evil persecution. Once they understand that, you can almost feel a shift in their expression and really want to help. And then we speak more about like the ways practitioners are persecuted. And forced organ harvesting is one of many ways the CCP uses to persecute and try to make money off of people. So it is hard to believe what the CCP is doing. So we have to bring the evidence. We try to bring all the papers, all the evidence, explain as good as we can that what's behind the forced organ harvesting, because it's $1 billion industry and it's targeting 70 to 100 million practitioners. And a lot of these staffers, often they're younger and they just started to work for either senators or House representatives. They don't know about that. And so it takes a little bit of explanation, and also it takes a little bit of talking about Chinese culture in general and talking about how the Chinese Communist Party came to be, which is hard to understand for Westerners. It was hard to understand for me that the CCP tries to place itself as the highest authority and doesn't want people to believe anything beyond it. They do not want people to believe in any divine existence for control. And for Westerners, I think to make that connection is a little bit difficult for us to understand, because we live in a free country, luckily. And freedom of belief and freedom of religion is valued very much in the United States, but it is not in China. So we try to do this grassroots explanation to people and connect them from the heart, not only facts, not only evidence, not only talking about numbers and atrocities and human rights violations, but really trying to move their heart. Because once their heart is moved, they feel proud that they can be in a position to really make a change and to really put the effort into talking to their representative with the right evidence and pointing at how this is really a battle between good and evil. Once they understand that, I feel you can break through easier. That's my experience anyway.
You mentioned the forced organ harvesting. What do you think we can do more to bring more awareness to this issue, to the House, to the Senate, or the community in the US?
Yeah, that is a very good question. We try to raise as much awareness as we can by talking about it. But I think the topic it's the most evil thing I believe that humanity ever has committed. This is a crime that is so horrible that it is truly hard to believe. So there needs to be more work done, making people see how, okay, in an ethical donation system, it's life-saving to, if you're in need of an organ, you're placed on the list, and then a donor that willingly wants to donate their organ is matched to your blood type. That's an ethical donation system. Whereas in China, it's called reverse matching, where people, if they run out of time, let's say, could schedule a organ transplant in China within days. And so there has been a lot of, from what I understand, organ tourism, where people from the United States or Europe would travel to China and schedule organ transplantation. And to make them see if a person does that, an execution is happening. Somebody is dying for you. So it is possible that a lot of people that go to China for organs are not aware and they don't know. Maybe they do know, we don't know. But what needs to happen, I think, and we talked about that to the staffers as well, is education in schools and universities, in the medical education. And that bill of the Falun Gong Protection Act is rolling the ball in the right direction because the government is starting to want to pay more attention to education and making sure that people in the medical industry are very aware and know. And I think it has to start with medical professionals. And once this bill passes, once it is becoming law, I believe that medical professionals will be informed, all of them. And then that cannot happen as easily. Because how that came to the daylight in the first place was because of medical professionals that became suspicious about patients that would be saying, oh, I'm running out of time, but I scheduled a heart transplant in China. There's an Israeli doctor, I cannot remember his name at the moment, but he was like getting suspicious. How can you schedule a heart transplant? It's impossible. So because of, good-hearted doctors, that issue came more to the foreground in the first place. So if there's more education in the medical field, I think China, or better to say the Chinese Communist Party, can no longer do what they're doing because the whole world is watching and cutting ties with China in that way.
Now the CCP has launched the transnational suppression campaign against Shen Yun and Falun Gong through media and lawsuits in the US. Can you talk more about this?
Yes, it's been shocking to watch that the transnational repression has been escalating the last 2 years tremendously, especially such a beautiful company like Shen Yun. And I am an artist, and I always mention it to the senator staffers as well. I believe that art has such a power to move people's hearts. So the CCP wants to stop Shen Yun because Shen Yun reaches 1 million people every year and moves their hearts with art, with beauty, with peace, and with creativity. And so they do the best they can to harass. There has been many, many bomb threats. A lot of theaters had to face threats. They're always baseless. Like they write emails saying, "Oh, we will place a bomb in a theater if you play this show here." But that's not the only way they try to harass. They also bribe social media influencers to try to destroy the reputation of either Falun Gong practitioners or any affiliated company that is run by Falun Gong practitioners. So the CCP is spending a lot of money to bribe media, not only social media influencers, but also large media. And we've been seeing that, like articles in lawfare, using lawfare, for instance, trying to sue companies for things that are ridiculous. And they don't expect to win that lawsuit. They just want to create mistrust in the population. They just want like headlines in the paper saying, oh, Shen Yun is sued, or any company that is run by Falun Gong practitioners or founded by Falun Gong practitioners is sued for ridiculous reasons. And then, the lawsuit doesn't go through, but it sows mistrust. It creates mistrust in the population. And that's what the CCP is trying to do. And how to counteract that is by, again, like speaking up about these things and hopefully people get to see Shenyun for themselves, how beautiful it is. And I know I've met dancers and I've met musicians that work for Shenyun. They're very proud to work for Shenyun because finally they get the chance to negate this persecution, but also to show a China before communism that is rooted in 5,000 years of beautiful culture, so rich. And I'm always interested in culture because I'm an artist. And from what I learned from China, it's so deeply rooted in these beautiful principles of Buddhism and Taoism. The medicine is so profound and rich. The art is so beautiful. So Shenyun dancers and musicians, they're proud to be able to show that what the Chinese Communist Party was trying to destroy for so long.
Do the congressmen or senators, they know the CCP are trying to target Shenyun and Falun Gong in the U.S.?
A lot of more senior representatives are aware. Yeah. So a lot of the more senior representatives are aware, I noticed. They know because the CCP just made a threat to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and so when I mentioned that to some of the staffers, yes, they do know. And they are outraged and they are very moved by that and because often we talk to people working in national security and they do understand this is a massive national security risk. And I don't think this will play out much longer because, the awareness is growing in that area.
So the CCP's attention about the transnational suppression, what do you think does this relate to America? Because some people say this persecution is happening in China and just about Falun Gong and Shenyun. What does this relate to American people? What's your perspective?
My perspective is that we should have this kind of cultural exchange where we learn from each other. And when Shenyun was created by Chinese immigrants with no government funding, they brought something to America and to the whole world that anybody can benefit from. Because I've seen audience members, because I've watched Shenyun many times, and I've seen audience members to tears walking out and be so inspired and uplifted and grateful. And they share that, and they often express that they didn't even know that still existed, like a performance where it's about true beauty. And so having that harassed on American soil is horrible. And it's not just, a gift for the international stages to have something like Shenyun shown. But also there's Falun Gong practitioners that are American citizens and they work here and they want to just live in freedom, and being harassed that way on American soil, is horrible. So I think the CCP made a huge mistake to escalate the transnational repression because it's going to backfire because more people are becoming angry and do not want to see that because freedom of belief and freedom of thought is valued so much, especially in the United States. And I'm from Austria. And when I came to the United States, I even felt that freedom more than I felt when I was still in Austria. So I think the CCP, at the end of the day, it's backfiring on them.
Can you talk more about the CCP's infiltration in the U.S.?
The CCP's infiltration in the U.S. has been going on for decades, I think. And they've been doing that by bribing and silencing the media. For instance, that a lot of people don't even know about the persecution of Falun Gong when it's targeting 70 to 100 million people. That is because the CCP does not want people to talk about Falun Gong. And Uyghurs and Tibetans, you hear more in the media about that, but particularly not Falun Gong. And the reason for that is because Falun Gong practitioners are not afraid talking about the truth, and they have many outlets. They have English language media, like the Epoch Times, like NTD TV, like Shenyun, and many other, like radio stations. So Falun Gong practitioners, out of just with their creativity, started all these companies. So it became the number one whistleblower of human rights violations of the CCP. So
there are more than 400 million Chinese people has created the CCP and its affiliate organizations, and more than 4 million international people signed the petition to end CCP campaign. How do you think about this?
I think it is tremendous, because quitting the CCP, for anybody who quits the CCP, I think they're really liberating themselves from a regime that has only used violence, lies, and suppression for so long. And by making that statement and saying, I want to be free of the CCP, I'm very happy for every single person that does that, because it doesn't only mean that they take a stance and say, I choose a life of freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, but also in a spiritual sense, I feel it is good to step away from an organization. Like I think CCP is criminals. I don't even think of it as a government. And stepping away from that and saying, like, I can see through this, and I cannot be bribed, and I cannot be lied to. It takes a moment of courage and power and self-confidence to say, I take charge of myself and I want to walk a path of freedom.
So today, we are gathering here to commemorate the July 20th for 26 years. So at this special day, do you have any words you want to say to the U.S. government or the international community or the House or Senate?
Yes. I've been practicing Falun Gong for 22 years now, 21 years now, and I learned about the persecution early on, and we did everything we could, and I was only a teenager. Now I'm older, and having this persecution still going on, I didn't think it would last this long. It's now 26 years. It's been too long, and I truly, truly hope, but it feels like a change in the government right now, where people are starting to stand up against the CCP, and I think that we will see a change very soon happening, where the ties are cut and the world is saying we want to, live in freedom, trade in freedom, and we do not allow these kind of human rights violations any longer. So I truly hope it's not going to be another year, and this persecution will stop this year or as soon as possible.
So do you have anything you want to say to the Falun Gong practitioners who are still suffering and persisting their belief in China?
I have so much respect for practitioners in China. They live in constant terror and fear, but they have been brave enough to speak out about the truth, risking their lives every day by printing pamphlets, printing flyers, spreading the truth of truth, compassion, tolerance, being good all over China, helping so many other people to understand the truth. I have my deepest respect for practitioners in China. And I often think what I would do in the situation of being incarcerated or even tortured. And I like to think I would be as strong as practitioners in China to withstand that and not give in and stay strong and hold tight to their faith and their belief. And I think it's an example that in history there has been spiritual believers often, they found it more important to stand by their principles and their belief, and they found it even more important than their own lives. And I think Falun Gong practitioners are going through the same thing, and they often say, it's more important to me to believe in Falun Gong and remain in my faith than even losing my life. And I have my deepest respect for that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.